Have you ever been in a relationship, and this could be with a friend, a partner, or a family member, where you feel like you are slowly going crazy? You find yourself having the same frustrating conversation over and over again, like a skipping record. You know the opening lines, you can predict the emotional climax, and you know exactly how it will end, with both of you feeling misunderstood, resentful, and completely exhausted. It feels like you are trapped in a strange play, cast in a role you never auditioned for, speaking lines you don't remember learning. And no matter how hard you try to improvise, to change the scene, you somehow always end up back at the same frustrating conclusion. You can't seem to find the exit. Now, our first instinct, especially in the age of internet diagnostics, is to think the problem is the other person. We reach for a label. We tell ourselves that they're a victim, or a narcissist, or a manipulator. And while those things can sometimes be true, what if the problem isn't the other actor? What if the problem is the play itself? What if you are both just performers, unconsciously and compulsively playing out a script that you learned long, long ago? This isn't just a metaphor. It is a core concept in psychology, a way of understanding the hidden, invisible architecture of our most difficult relationships. Today, we're going to explore these hidden scripts, these psychological games that so often ruin our connections. We will uncover the secret reasons why we are drawn to play them. We'll learn how to recognize the specific role you've been cast in, and most importantly, we'll discover how to find the courage to put down the script, break character, and gracefully walk off the stage for good. This idea of being trapped in an invisible script was famously explored by the psychiatrist Eric Berne in his groundbreaking 1964 book, Games People Play. He gave these repeating, dysfunctional, and crazy-making patterns a simple name: psychological games. Now, a game, in this sense, isn't fun, and for the most part, it isn't conscious. Berne defined a game as a repeating, unconscious pattern of interaction that seems plausible on the surface, but is really designed to lead to a hidden, negative, deeply familiar emotional payoff for both players. Every game has a few key ingredients. It has defined roles. For example, the victim and the rescuer. It has a predictable script, a series of conversational moves and counter moves that always lead to the same place. And most importantly, every game has a psychological payoff. This payoff is the secret, unconscious reason we play. It is the familiar, albeit painful, feeling at the end of the interaction that confirms a deep, negative core belief we hold about ourselves, others, or the world. For example, a game might always end with one person feeling righteously angry, reinforcing their belief that, see, people always let me down. And the other person is left feeling shamefully inadequate, reinforcing their belief that, see, I always mess things up. The crazy-making part, the part that keeps us stuck in these loops for years, is that while nobody consciously enjoys the outcome, both players are unconsciously motivated to keep the game going. Why? Because the familiar pain of the game often feels safer to our wounded parts than the terrifying vulnerability of real, unpredictable, authentic connection. And this is the core conflict we'll be exploring today. It is the conflict between our conscious, adult desire for healthy, game-free connection and our unconscious, often childlike, compulsion to play out these familiar, painful dramas. These games are not a sign of madness. They are a sign of old wounds looking for a familiar stage. Understanding them is like finding the hidden cheat codes to your own relational patterns, allowing you to finally put down the controller and simply be present. Let's begin with the most common and perhaps most recognizable psychological game of all. It's a drama that plays out in families, friendships, and offices around the world. Eric Berne's student, Stephen Karpman, brilliantly mapped this dynamic in what he famously called the Karpman drama triangle. The name of the game, often initiated by one of the players, is "Why does this always happen to me?" And it requires at least two people to begin: a helpless victim and a noble rescuer. Consider Sarah and her friend Tom. Tom is always in a crisis. His car broke down right before a big interview. His landlord is being unfair again. His boss completely misunderstands his brilliant intentions. He plays the role of the victim perfectly, broadcasting a signal of gentle, weary helplessness out into the world. And Sarah, wanting to be a good, compassionate friend, instinctively steps into the role of the rescuer. She swoops in. She gives thoughtful advice. She lends a little money here and there. She offers endless hours of emotional support, listening to the same stories of misfortune again and again. And for a while, this feels good to her. It feels noble. It gives Sarah a sense of purpose and importance. She is needed. But here is the hidden engine of the game. Sarah starts to notice that Tom, despite all her help, never actually solves his problems. Crises just change form. That's because the unconscious goal of the game is not to solve the problem. The hidden psychological payoff for Tom is to receive attention and to confirm his core belief that I am helpless and the world is unfair. And the hidden payoff for Sarah is to feel virtuous and to confirm her core belief that my worth comes from being needed and fixing others. Both are getting a deep, familiar psychological need met, even though the game itself is deeply destructive. Eventually, as is always the case, Sarah gets exhausted. Her well of compassion runs dry, replaced by a growing, quiet resentment. She finally decides to set a boundary. She says, "Tom, I'm sorry, but I can't help you with this one." And in that moment, the game dramatically shifts. Tom doesn't thank her for all of her past help. He immediately recasts her in the third role of the triangle, the persecutor. He might say, "I thought you were my friend. I guess I really can't count on anyone." Suddenly, for the crime of having a limit, Sarah is the selfish, uncaring villain. And this is her painful but ultimately liberating realization. The game was never about helping. It was about maintaining a dysfunctional dynamic. She wasn't Tom's friend. She was his function. And her help wasn't pure generosity. It was a way to feed her own need to be the rescuer. They were both trapped, and the only way out was to finally stop playing her part. Let's move to a more subtle and often more seductive psychological game. This one doesn't revolve around crisis, but around praise and admiration. It's a game built on the powerful psychological forces of projection and the deep human need for external validation. We can call it the "You're Brilliant" game, and its two primary players are the all-knowing idol and the perfect admirer. This dynamic is incredibly common between bosses and employees, mentors and mentees, and even in romantic relationships where one person is placed on a pedestal. Let's look at David, a manager who was recently promoted and is secretly feeling insecure, battling a quiet but persistent case of imposter syndrome. He desperately needs to feel competent and in control. And then there's Chloe, his direct report, who perhaps feels powerless or anxious herself, and whose learned survival strategy is to align herself closely with authority. She showers David with praise. "That was a brilliant idea in the meeting, David. You handled that difficult client so well." An unspoken, unconscious contract is formed between them. David, the idol, gets a steady stream of validation that soothes his insecurity. He feels powerful, seen, and competent. Chloe, the admirer, gets a sense of safety and favor by aligning herself with power. For a time, the arrangement works perfectly for both of their wounded parts. The problem, the inherent flaw in the game's design, arises when David needs something real. He needs honest, critical feedback on a new project. He needs a creative challenge from his team to make an idea better. But when he turns to Chloe, she is incapable of providing it. Her only role in the game is to admire. To criticize or challenge him would be to break the unspoken contract. She can only say, "It's great, David," and in that moment, David starts to feel strangely lonely and completely unseen. The praise that once felt so good now feels hollow because he realizes it is automatic, not authentic. He has a powerful, sinking realization. Chloe isn't loyal to him. The complex, sometimes doubtful, real human being. She is loyal to the powerful idol persona she needs him to be for her own sense of security. The relationship, which had felt so supportive, is revealed to be empty. He wasn't being genuinely seen or respected. He was simply being mirrored. And admiration, he learns, is a very poor substitute for authenticity. Our next psychological game is one of the most common ways that toxic bonds are formed, both at work and in friendships. Preys on our deep human desire for intimacy and the seductive feeling of being special. We can call it the just between us game. The two primary players are the confessor and the secret keeper. The game begins when one person, the confessor, pulls another, the secret keeper, into a manufactured circle of two. They create this private space by sharing sensitive and often negative information about a third person who isn't present. It is a bond built not on shared joy or mutual admiration, but on shared complaint, shared gossip, or shared secrets. This creates a powerful and deeply counterfeit form of intimacy. Imagine Jessica at her office. Her colleague, Ben, frequently pulls her aside by the coffee machine. He lowers his voice and begins to vent, complaining about their boss's incompetence or sharing a confidential frustration about another teammate. For Jessica, at first, this feels special. Ben is trusting her with this secret information. It makes her feel important, valued, in the know. She has been cast in the role of the secret keeper, and initially, it's a validating role to play. The hidden psychological payoff for Ben is that he gets to discharge his anger and resentment without any of the risks of direct confrontation. The hidden payoff for Jessica is that feeling of being on the inside, of having a special connection that others don't. But soon, Jessica begins to feel a sense of unease. The constant negativity is draining. The secrets start to feel heavy. And then comes the chilling, inevitable realization, the one that shatters the entire illusion. If Ben talks about everyone else this way to her, he is almost certainly talking about her this way to everyone else. Suddenly, the special bond doesn't feel like a safe harbor anymore. It feels like a trap. The foundation of their connection wasn't mutual respect. It was shared negativity. This is the toxic outcome of the just between us game. It doesn't create genuine trust. It creates triangulation. It bonds two people together by pushing a third person out, and it leaves everyone feeling insecure because the secret keeper knows that at any moment they could become the next topic of conversation. The perceived intimacy was never real. It was just a shared enemy. So, we can now see that in each of these games, the rescuer and the victim, the idol and the admirer, the confessor and the secret keeper, there is a common, invisible thread. Both players have an unconscious role, a hidden motive, and a shared, unspoken contract that keeps the painful drama going. This brings us to the most important, empowering, and sometimes difficult realization of all. You cannot force the other person to stop playing the game. You cannot make them see the script. You cannot make them change their lines. And you cannot win the game on its own terms. The only move that changes everything, the only source of power you truly have, is to consciously and calmly decline your role. This is the essence of transactional power. The game requires your participation to exist. The moment you refuse to play the noble rescuer, the helpless victim has no one to save them, and the game collapses. The moment you stop needing to be the all-knowing idol, the perfect admirer has no one to praise, and their game becomes obsolete. The moment you politely decline to be the secret keeper, the confessor is left speaking into a void. You don't win the game. You transcend it. You render it unplayable simply by refusing to participate. Think of your life in these dynamics as being an actor on a stage, holding an invisible script. You've been playing this part, the rescuer, the idol, the confidant. For so long, you've mistaken the role for your true self. The costume has fused to your skin, and the lines have become second nature. The realization, the climax of your own inner work, is understanding that you can simply see the script in your hands. You can read the lines, acknowledge the role you've been playing with compassion for the part of you that needed it, and then, with quiet, conscious intention, you can choose to set the script down and gracefully walk off the stage. The other actor may be confused. They may get angry that you've stopped saying your lines. They may even try to pull you back onto the stage with guilt or praise or a new manufactured crisis. But you are finally free. Because in that moment, you have chosen your own authenticity over their familiar performance. And that choice, that quiet refusal to play, is the beginning of every real and game-free connection you will ever have. The journey we've discussed today, then, is ultimately one of awakening. It is about moving from being an unconscious actor, speaking memorized lines in someone else's drama, to becoming the conscious, and sometimes improvisational, author of your own interactions. It's the profound recognition that these repeating, painful patterns that have haunted your relationships are not your destiny. They are simply habits, powerful habits learned long ago, and habits, with awareness, can be changed. And this reveals where our true personal power lies. Freedom from these games is never found by blaming the other player, by labeling them as toxic, or by waiting for them to change. That is a powerless position, one that keeps you stuck in the role of the victim. True freedom, true agency, is found by courageously turning the lens inward and asking the questions that truly matter. What role have I been unconsciously auditioning for in my relationships? And what hidden, unmet need from my past has this role been trying to meet for me? Perhaps playing the rescuer made you feel valuable in a world where you felt overlooked. Perhaps playing the admirer made you feel safe around powerful figures. Perhaps being the secret keeper made you feel important and included. When you can understand your own part in the dynamic, when you can meet that old underlying need with your own compassion, you gain the power to finally change the pattern. You no longer need the game because you are learning. Give yourself the very thing you were seeking from others. So, I will leave you not with a conclusion, but with a gentle starting point for your own self-inquiry. A quiet question to hold as you observe your life this week. Ask yourself this, with as much gentle honesty as you can find. What is one psychological game you have noticed you repeatedly get pulled into? And in that game, what role do you typically play? Is it the rescuer, the victim, the admirer, the secret keeper? Just noticing it without judgment is the first and most powerful step toward choosing a different role and eventually a different, more authentic game entirely. Learning to recognize and then step away from these psychological games is not a one-time revelation. It is a core skill of emotional intelligence that you practice every day. It is the art of being present enough with yourself to notice when you are being pulled onto that old, familiar stage and finding the quiet strength again and again to politely decline the role. This work is subtle, it is deep, and it is profoundly life-changing. If this exploration has given you a new lens to see your relationships through, or perhaps just a name for a pattern you've long felt but couldn't identify, I invite you to please support our community by liking this video and subscribing. It does more than help the channel. It helps us continue to build a space dedicated to these deeper, more conscious conversations. The journey of walking off the stage can feel a bit lonely at first. It's powerful to know that others are doing the same brave work alongside you. And so, I would be genuinely honored to hear your thoughts. If you feel comfortable, share an insight you've had about a game you no longer wish to play. You don't need to share dramatic details or name the other players. Just the role you realized you were playing, and perhaps what you think the hidden payoff was for you. Was it feeling needed? Feeling safe? Feeling important? Simply naming it can be a powerful act of liberation. Your moment of clarity can be a light for someone else who is still feeling lost in the dark of their own relational patterns. The comment section can be a space where we can all learn from each other's stories, how to have more authentic, game-free connections. Thank you for your courage to look at these patterns, both in the world and in yourself. Be well.